Good morning and welcome to today's Almost Daily Devotional. We talked yesterday in worship about finding hope in the midst of suffering and the way that we are called as Christians to risk a little suffering, to act on behalf of Christ, to do what it is Jesus would have us do. And so today, this week, we're going to talk a little bit more about what does that actually look like? What does it look like practically in our lives to risk on God's behalf? So our first story this morning is going to be from 1 Kings chapter 17. Sometime later, the brook dried up because there'd been no rain. The word of the Lord came to Elijah. Go at once to Zarephath in this region of Sidon and stay there. I have directed a widow there to supply you with food. So he went to Zarephath. When he came to the town gate, a widow was there gathering sticks. He called to her and asked, "Would you bring me a little water in a jar so I might have a drink?" As she was going to get it, he called, "And bring me, please, a piece of bread." "As surely as the Lord your God lives," she replied, "I don't have any bread, only a handful of flour in a jar and a little olive oil in a jug. I am gathering a few sticks to take home and make a meal for myself and my son, that we may eat it and die." Elijah said to her, "Don't be afraid. Go home and do as you have said. But first make a small loaf of bread for me for what you have and bring it to me, and then make something for yourself and your son. For this is what the Lord says: the jar of flour will not be used up, and the jug of oil will not run dry, until the day the Lord sends rain on the land." She went away and did as Elijah told her. So there was food every day for Elijah and for the woman and her family. For the jar of flour was not used up, and the jug of oil did not run dry, in keeping with the word of the Lord spoken by Elijah. Now, my children are getting old enough to start to understand some of the more difficult stuff in the world. And one of the things that we talked about this morning as we were eating our breakfast was that not everybody has food whenever they want it. Not everybody has the privilege of choosing to put whatever they want into their cabinet. That we were lucky that we could eat what we wanted for breakfast and that we had a choice. And my 6-year-old was really sad. You mean not everybody gets to have whatever they want for breakfast? Because she was upset because we were eating oatmeal and she didn't want it, right? And it's a stark reminder that we are, most of us, quite blessed to have food. It may not always be the food we want, but most of us have food to sustain us, to fill our bellies. Now, Elijah was sent out into the wilderness by God. God said, "Go out into the wilderness and I promise to take care of you." And God did. Even in the midst of famine and disease and drought, Elijah never went hungry. He never went without. He was fed in one way or the other through birds in some cases, and in this case, a widow and her son. Now, Elijah could have chosen two paths here. He could have let her do what she wanted and continue to just drink the water that she offered and then let her go home because he was secure, he was safe. But he chose to risk. He chose to risk that his blessing would extend to her as well, that his blessing from God would be enough to cover him and her son. Because there was no guarantee from God that Elijah's protection would provide for other people in the land. God only promised Elijah, but Elijah took the risk on behalf of the widow and the widow's son to extend a little bit of his blessing and a little bit of his privilege to her. And she didn't have that or have access to that. And so none of them went hungry. And so one of the things we have to be careful about is that we don't live with a scarcity mindset. We may not always have exactly what we want. We may not always have enough, but we always have God's protection, and we always have enough to extend an offering to another person, a little offering of hope. It may not be in the form of food, it may be in other forms, it may be in the form of solidarity, of sitting with one another and saying, yeah, I have the same problems too. But we always have enough, and we can always risk extending our blessings to another because we know we're not going to fall. We're not going to drown. Thanks be to God for that.